If you want to start a nonprofit, make sure that it is something that is not overly saturated. And if it is, what's going to be that thing that's super unique that's going to make you stand out? That's not to discourage like what your dreams are, but if you do want to start a nonprofit, like making sure that it is something that is so compelling.
What's up, y'all? I'm Lauren.
And I'm Adrienne.
And this is the Two Mics,
Two Glasses
podcast.
We're two best friends discuss business ownership and life.
What's going on, my glove?
Nothing. Well, something. Who do we have today?
Listen, I'm super hyped that our guest is here with us. I feel like we've
our friend,
yeah, but we've like seen her go through these stages and phases and like always end up on top. And it's really dope that she's joining us today.
How long have we known her? I know it's been at least 10 years, I believe.
I mean, I joined TN after you, so at least from 2013.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you joined in like 2011.
Yeah, but she wasn't in it initially when I immediately joined.
Okay.
I joined 2011. So yeah, it was probably around that.
2013. I remember membership chair. I think it's membership chair.
Who?
LaTricea was membership chair.
Oh, probably.
Anyway, you know what we're going to...
She's amazing.
Let's just introduce our guest.
Okay.
The LaTricea Adams, who is a proud native of Memphis, Tennessee. But she is also the founder, CEO, and president of Young, Gifted, and Green, which is formerly Black Millennials for Flint, which is a national environmental justice and civil rights organization with the purpose of bringing like-minded organizations together to collectively take action and advocate against the crisis of lead exposure and environmental injustice in disadvantaged communities throughout the nation. That's some serious work right there. LaTricea is the youngest African-American woman appointed to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, where she serves as co-chair of the Executive Order on Revitalizing Our Nation's Commitment to Environmental Justice for All working group, as well as the co-chair for the Carbon Management Working Group. LaTricea is a former president of the Memphis Urban League Young Professionals and a former member of the American Bar Association's Environmental Justice Task Force, the first ever and current chair of the Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission, a member of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation Water Infrastructure Advisory Committee, and TDEC, and Shelby County's Emissions Reduction Planning Advisory Committee. She also was honored as the Child Health Advocate of the Year by the Children's Environmental Health Network, the Memphis Urban League Inaugural Rockstar Award, and the University of Memphis's Memphis State 8 awardee, and there are many other awards that she has received. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So we would like to welcome our very esteemed guest. So let's bring on LaTricea. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. Child, I could barely read all of them committees.
Listen,
So
y'all could
co-chairs.
I'm from Memphis.
I feel like you left off some things. Like I feel like you were the president of the Greater Washington Urban League.
I absolutely was. I'm like, dang, bio.
Yes,
that should have came
first.
I'm just saying. So former president, and vice president and membership chair. Ooh, I gave Thursday Network a lot of time,
a lot
and
of
support.
Years.
A lot of years.
What year did you join Thursday Network?
I joined Thursday Network in, I want to say it was either 2012 or 2013. If it was 2012, it was the latter part of the year. But full speed was in 2013, because I think that's when I became membership chair.
So you joined and just went ahead and ran for something.
Listen.
Like immediately.
I was like, So I was new to the city, trying to like get my bearings in DC. The only people that I knew when I moved up there, I had a few sorority sisters, but I didn't have any family. So I was like, let me figure out a way to connect with some folks because this is exciting to be in DC, but I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So
I was similarly, even though I'm from the DC area, when I joined Thursday Network, or before I joined Thursday Network, I was like, oh, I'm in DC. Like, how do I meet people? Like, where are the other
right,
young adults? Like,
That's
it
true.
just felt, I don't know, difficult to meet
Yeah.
people. And then someone, I think
Like
so,
authentic relationships with people.
yeah. And when you're young, like, I don't know. I mean, you meet people at the club and stuff, but you're not really
Ever gonna see them again.
networking. You know?
right, it's
Never
a
gonna
different
see them.
type of connection.
Right.
Right. I did find some great friends through Thursday Network. It's a good
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
But then they were like, "Don't you want to be on the board?" And then I looked at LaTricea.
I think
It's a
I
lot of
asked you
work.
at least like 4 times. Like, don't you want to be? You're like, no, ma'am. I will
Mm-mm.
support, but
I was like,
I,
"I got a
I'm
job already."
You knew. But
Y'all
you know what's
were.
funny though? So it's
I had a
like
lot of respect though, because y'all were working real
it's a
hard.
lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's definitely a part-time job, and as president might feel like a full-time job.
Yes.
woo,
But it's really rewarding, especially when you go to conferences. It's like you're like in
Ooh.
this little exclusive club of like board members across the nation. It's really fun.
And you get to go to all the parties.
Yeah, it's just like people know you, and you're like, oh, you're vice president of this chapter. Oh, I'm over like people just know your name, and it's just
Mm.
like you're.
So
I don't know, you
Adrian
feel
was
like royalty a
Adrian was
little
there
bit.
for the notoriety. Okay,
I did the work too.
I'm just kidding. I mean, you clearly started the what's the thing called
Spirit of service.
Spirit of Service Awards. That's a
correct.
big deal. So anyway, let's get into a couple of questions
Yes.
now that we have some pleasantries out the way.
Yes.
So one, what are you reading? What is one of your favorite books?
One of my probably not favorite books, but what I'm reading now is All About Love by Bell Hooks. I mean, I
We read
just
that.
in the current climate, my God,
We
that
need
we're
love.
in, it helps to ground me in like who
Hmm.
I am, why I do everything. Yeah. I
We
always
just
get
read that
down
in
on
book club,
We did. We did. Nice.
although I didn't finish it yet. Did you finish it?
Yes.
Did you finish it?
Did
Are
I
you reading
finish
it
it?
now?
I'm reading this is a second read. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
I feel like I need a second read, second
Yeah, I don't know
listen.
if I'm
No,
appreciating it like on the first go. I think I need to hear it again.
I think we need to read it and not audible it because you hear it in like their voice,
That's not Bell Hook's
Ah,
voice. That's somebody else.
but it's like somebody's like if they have like a boring voice. When you hear it in your voice, like I feel like it might be more exciting.
Okay. That's hilarious. Okay, so All About Love by Bell Hooks. That's a really dope choice. Um, next question.
What
Okay.
if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
ooh. I really would like to fly, and it's really just based on the current state of my life right now because I'm traveling all the time. I'd be like, let me just fly on over to this place instead of doing all the rigmarole with other modes
Travel.
of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Like a
also it's
teleport.
just yeah, that part. Like it's just something so important. Like I'm here right now. Poof, I'm somewhere else. Um,
That's so funny that we had a previous guest mention that they didn't want themselves to fly, but they wanted the ability to just be on a plane going to like they could just like
Yeah, hop on a plane.
yeah like they'll
I would skip
snap
the
their
plane
fingers and be
part.
on the plane going somewhere.
I would skip the plane part if it was
I
me.
know I would want to
right,
teleport.
just put me where I need to be. Like let me
Right.
skip
Yeah,
over
like
all
Luggage.
right. So interesting that y'all had a very similar superpower, but people were trying to get around, and then with this traffic over up in here, is it? There's a lot of traffic in Memphis. You back home, right?
So I am back. I am back home. It depends on the part of the city, but in comparison to some like Nashville, for example, oh, it's heaven because Nashville traffic is intense, but it's decent. But I also lived in downtown Memphis, So I don't really have to get on the highway a lot unless I'm like going to my mom's house, but she lives going towards Mississippi. So it's not that it's not that much traffic, but on the east side of the city, it can get pretty heavy with traffic because people who live in the suburbs are commuting in and out. But it's, after living in DC, everything is like a
A
cakewalk.
A
dream.
breeze, right?
Right, in comparison. So yeah, but it's not too bad. Mm-mm.
That's good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Last question. What you drinking?
So I have some, just it's not really,
Ooh.
a lot of razzle dazzle, but it's a good strawberry margarita.
Yummy.
Just can't go wrong with
Mm.
that, you know?
Yes. Do you remember
Mhm.
the brand?
Um 1800, so it ain't nothing, real
Yes.
fancy.
We love
Uh, give you a
1800.
buzz
1800 is
though.
it.
Hmm.
Yes.
Keep it
It does
basic.
its
Same
job.
brand.
Yes. Yeah. Keep it right there.
Awesome.
All right, girl. So what
Hmm.
we drinking?
Yeah, so we have a sponsored bottle today. So this bottle is from Huck Spirits. It's a cherry bourbon sangria.
Oh.
So
Ooh.
it's a bold, powerful drink designed for the dedicated dreamers who
No.
appreciate the robust essence of infused bourbon, artfully layered with the deep, rich notes of cherry. This concoction is not just a beverage, it's a statement, a tribute to the strength and complexity of flavors that can only be appreciated by those with a discerning palate. The drink presents itself with a arresting visual appeal. The deep, almost mystical amber of the bourbon forms a captivating canvas, while the dark, luscious red of the cherry infusions adds depth and intrigue. Together, they create a visual experience that hints at the potency and richness contained within. So, this sangria is black owned by a friend of mine. It's super delicious, and
And
yes,
very toxic.
cheers to Huck
High.
Spirits. You can go to, yeah. So the alcohol content of it is at least 20%. So when you get like a sangria or a glass of wine, it's usually between 10 to
10 to 15. Yeah.
15%. So this is over 20%. So you definitely feel that little buzz. And it doesn't even need anything. Like get a little ice or just chill it. And it is delicious.
Mm.
So let us cheers. LaTricea,
Chaw.
we go cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Mm-mm. All right, let's get
Yummy,
into this.
yummy.
Ooh, child, I'm greasy. Put my...
All right. So we're gonna hop right in. So LaTricea, we read your bio, but kind of tell us in your own words, what do you do?
Yeah. Ooh. So, I wear a lot of different hats, but many of them are connected to environment. So I spent a lot of time around twofold. One is around political advocacy. So that is at the federal level, sometimes at the state level, very much so at the local level. And then the other part of the work that I do is around programming, more so just to keep our programs going. So I do a whole lot of work around fund development because programs cost money. So that's a large portion of my role. I also do quite a bit of work from the programmatic perspective around community education, which is cool because, my student loans and friends, I used to be an educator for 16 years. So I'm glad that I'm still able to use a lot of what I did in my previous life in this work. So on the political advocacy front, of course, we're an environmental justice and civil rights organization. So we do a significant amount of intergovernmental relations. Woo. So I spent a lot of time working with, I'm using air quotes, and engaging with agencies, as well as elected officials as well. And that can range from, on the elected official side, it can range from members of Congress, the US Senate, to state reps, to council persons, to county commissioners, just depending on what the issue area is. Um, as far as our educational platform, we also build the capacity of community members, and it's intergenerational, but we have a special focus area on youth where we also teach youth on how to engage with their elected officials, creating spaces for them to also be able to interact with agencies. And then from a programmatic side, I mean, we're on the ground. So depending on what city we're in, I'll, highlight in Memphis and Baltimore, we do door knocking campaigns. We started doing door knocking in Flint and in DC, where literally we'll come to your house and be like, y'all got lead in y'all water. Like do you have lead paint? We partner with Black firms that actually do testing from a residential perspective at no charge to residents, because we really want to know what's inside your house so that we can protect our folks. We also do a lot of coalition building. I would say when we first got started, environmental justice wasn't maybe as sexy as an issue area as it is now. So almost a decade ago, I mean, it was like pulling teeth to get people interested and really getting riled up, right, about environmental justice issues. So we also spend a lot of time working with folks that don't have a background in environment, but may have a background in civil rights or social justice. So that's a different level. It's still education, but it's like peer to peer education, really to expand our reach around issues surrounding environment. And the last thing that I will say that I do and I do with the organization is we mobilize power. So environment is a very white space, both white and male dominated. So we also do a lot of work to disrupt the patriarchy and the misogyny that exists with this kind of sector. You also come across like challenges with age. People don't do a lot of engagement like with young people, where once upon a time, millennials, we were the youngest, but we're not no more, which is so funny. But we also try to make sure that youth and young adults also have voice, because this is going to be their world. When I become, an elder and an ancestor, this is the earth that they will inherit. So we take that seriously and want to make sure that we are engaging with our young people so they essentially know what they're getting and know what they need to do to maintain. So that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell. Um,
Amazing.
I know. 2 hours later, that's all. That's it. That's dope though. Like I think the impact you're making and the reach that you guys have been able to gain over the years. And I know it didn't just start. You've been at this, you said a decade ago, which means you know how things were going a decade ago, which means you probably started this either that or more ago, right? So
mhm,
tell us a little bit about starting Black Millennials for Flint, what that looked like, and then we can get into like, okay, this is where we are today, but like
mhm.
getting started, how it seems so massive right now. You're like, how did you start this?
It's really surreal because how we got started actually, so in 2015 is when I learned, and a lot of people who were outside of the city of Flint learned about the Flint water crisis. These folks have been screaming from the top of their lungs for a year before it made national headlines. So in around 2015, it's a lot of stuff, and especially like during that time, Black Lives Matter was like at its peak at that time. Like police brutality was like running rampant, and like more things were visible, and so it was a lot going on, like in the civil rights, social justice space. And so when I learned about the Flint water crisis, I honestly was a little bit disappointed that some of our legacy civil rights organizations had not really pushed in to support Flint the way that I felt that they should. So, in millennial fashion that gave birth to our loud and bold Gen Z, I was like, well, I'm not going to wait on y'all. I'm going to do my own thing. So, while I was vice president at the time of Thursday Network, I organized a water distribution drive. Found out that was expensive. My God. I was like, ooh, wait a minute. Because that I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was barely 30 at that point. So I was like, I don't have money like this, but I can raise some. So interestingly enough, when you are urban league president, a main component of your role is fund development and fundraising and getting partnerships and doing sponsorship packets and all of these things. And I was literally able to bring those skills that I learned with the league to address it to this project. So the first thing that we were able to partner with some other urban league chapters. The biggest one was in Buffalo in New York, the Buffalo Urban League Young Professionals. We also got donations from some other Urban League chapters. And to our surprise, the National Urban League said, hey, let us step in and let us, do our part. So the National Urban League partnered with us. This is just, just a YP chapter. And so they got the name, they got the coin, they got the resources, they have the connections. And so we did our first service trip in April of 2016. However, in February of 2016, I did a national call. So I was just like, whoever want to be on this call, this situation with Flint is crazy. Like, we need to do more than just doing a water donation drive. So on February the 10th, 2016 is when that national call happened. We got a lot accomplished in that meeting. So we came up with a name. So with the original name, folks are like, why is it called Black Millennials for Flint? It's so straightforward. That literally who was on the call. That's literally who was
Black
on the
millennials.
call when we were brainstorming, like, well, what should we call this? That's what we came up with because that's who was on the call. It's so interesting because I still have flyers and notes from that first meeting. It's really cool to see that in retrospect. And so Black Millennials for Flint at that point was born. And I mean, we moved in warp speed because we didn't realize at that time we were literally the only and youngest EJ organization like ever. Like the youngest people to ever start something like that. And it was a lull. It was a big gap in time before you started to see younger people to lead this type of work. And so because it was a gap, we didn't know that it was a gap. Everybody was like, "Ooh, we're so glad you're here," right? So when we did the first service trip to Flint, we brought some youth with us from DC. We partnered with the organization that also came through Thursday Network with Black Swan Academy.
Oh yeah,
So we brought
Samantha.
youth. I
Yeah.
know, right? Full circle
Look at
moment.
y'all.
Look at us. So
See?
Black Swan was super new. They were like in what their first year. So we brought some DC youth with us. If you're familiar with the DC area, for folks that's listening, we brought kids that were east of the river, so Ward 7 and Ward 8, where all the majority of the Black folks stay, in DC. Maybe like 2 weeks after we got back from Flint, why did those same kids get notices in from their schools saying that it was lead in their drinking water at school?
Oh no.
Oh my
Like,
God, at the school?
at school. So I was already like, this is insane what's going on like in Flint, but I'm like, not in the nation's capital. So at that point, we were like, okay, we have had enough. So at that particular point in time, my actual employer was DC Public Schools. That is important. I testified against my employer before DC Council. I risked it all. I had to
Ooh.
call my parents and say, hey, I might get fired. So I'm going to need for y'all to kind of help me, for a little while. And on top of that, I also worked in the chief operating officers like division, which part of that division was responsible for facilities. There have been whistleblowers east of the river for months where it was discolored water, videos were going viral on social media, and the district didn't really do anything, and DC Council didn't do anything until Capitol Hill Montessori, which is for affluent children. their parents said something. Of course, they responded then. So what that led to is we got a bill passed. So it's a long, we didn't come up with the name of this bill, but it's called the DC Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Act of 2017. My God. And it's still the strongest bill in the country for mandatory testing in school drinking water. So we were like, if we could get this bill passed in DC, where else can we get it passed? So that very next year, we got a similar bill passed in the state of Maryland. We got a similar bill passed in the state of Tennessee. Do you know we just got the bill passed in Michigan last year? That's
Are
wild.
you
That should have been passed first.
first?
Yeah.
I
Like they
know,
were
right?
They were the first ones that you tried to get it past at?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But it's a marathon and not a sprint. So that's what positioned us to be in a political advocacy front, because we really took like DC by storm, because folks were like, who are these young black folk that are getting legislation passed. And so that really set the foundation for who we are as an organization. We still teacher at heart, because I still work full time. I just stopped working full time like 2.5 years ago. And so I brought in the education element where I'm like, okay, we need to tell people how bad this is. I had 3 degrees and I had no idea like how horrific these environmental issues were, not just with lead, but like poor air quality, other water quality issues. I was completely oblivious. And I'm like, we got to structure something where we are educating people on things that are happening in their own communities, in their own backyard. And I mean, we grew rapidly. So we started just working on things with Flint, immediately had to be responsive to what was going on in DC. And then we had to pick it apart like, oh, where else are there other places that are experiencing similar type of environmental injustices? And so since then, we work in Maryland, we work in Michigan, we still work in DC, we work in the state of Tennessee, but we have this really influential and big influence and portfolio, if you will, from a federal perspective, because even to this day, there's still not very many organizations that are structured in the way that we're structured. So you have like your environmentalists that use social media to hold corporations accountable. Sure, that's not to discredit them, but the work that we do is more so like, how do we shift the system so that we can essentially stop poisoning black and brown communities? How do we get like people directly from those communities that are impacted, like engaged into our democracy, so that they have a voice around what comes in, what comes out of their respective communities? So it's been a journey. It was not on my bingo card at all to start a nonprofit. My parents were like, girl, we hope you know what you're doing. Because I had a government job. I'm
Mm.
from the South. So my parents were like, go to school, get married, and get you a good government job.
And
I did
stay in
part
for
of
the
it. And
next
then I was like,
20 to 30 years, right?
I know. So it really was a testament of faith um, to
Yeah.
be able to do it, but just moving in purpose.
I'm sure you're enjoying this episode, but we wanted to quickly pop in to let you know about the cool swag we're wearing today. AMW Apparel is a line of inspirational and entrepreneurial clothing for those looking to stand out and make a statement to their following. We provide comfortable and high-quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops, and more. Enter code 2mics2glasses, which is the number 2, MICS, the number 2 again, GLASSES, with no spaces, for 10% off your first order at shopwithamw.com. Link in the description. We appreciate your support.
To
Yeah.
be able to do it, but just moving in purpose. Because I'm
Mm.
definitely a responding to an assignment, because it definitely was not something that I had planned to do at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
yeah.
Something, I mean, we got some good stuff out of there. And I think one of the things that made you guys so powerful was your ability to galvanize people and gather them. Like you had your national meeting, you kind of just started off like saying, this is what I'm going to do. And you were able to get people on board to support that. So for people who are starting a nonprofit and looking to gain that type of support, what advice would you give them to like garner that type of manpower to help?
Yeah, so the first thing I was saying, it probably may be odd to say. I think about my first board chair was like one of my really good friends. Shout out to the one and only Karis Goff. So,
Hey,
Hey,
Karis.
Karis
I
girl.
mean, when you get, hey
I was
girl,
just talking to
hey.
her about TV shows
Oh, were
on
you?
IG. Yes.
So when you get a nonprofit started, you really need to start with people that you really, really trust, that you feel like okay to be vulnerable with, because it's not all peaches and cream trying to get a nonprofit started. Now, one thing that I will say, I mean, I would be remiss not to acknowledge this. The Urban League really, really, really helped us to stand up this organization because it's so much structure that exists in the Urban League. So I even think about to this day, the way that we do like our program proposals, the way that we do our sponsorship packets, that literally came from the Urban League. It came from the knowledge that I gained by being an Urban League president, with being active in that chapter. A lot of those kind of professional skills that you may not get in a traditional career setting. So I always pay homage to the league for providing one, like the platform, because that was kind of wild, where I'm like, I'm just gonna do my own thing, but like having the support of the league to go to use that as a launch pad, and then be able to do things that are even greater, bigger and greater. The other thing that I will say that I did, because I didn't have time, I got an attorney to do my 501c3. Because I was just like, this is a lot. So another opportunity that I will say is I'm a big proponent of supporting Black businesses. And when you start a nonprofit, it's not just about like the moral compass and like finding people to do programs. It's literally the logistics of running, the business of running a nonprofit, because it is a business. So I think about like how the first website, shout out to Adrian, because I was like, girl, I'm poor. I can't do this out of pocket. Please help me, but we need a website. So thinking about uh all the different steps that are needed to just like get like started, to open the envelope. I also think about in the beginning we had to get a fiscal agent, because like we didn't have our 501c3 status, and so we were able to use the Greater Washington Urban League was our fiscal sponsor or fiscal agent, until we were able to get all our ducks in a row, where we were able to apply for the IRS determination. So a nonprofit is still a business. I want to reiterate that. Like yes, like you do good, humanity, all of those things, but it's still a business. You still have to get an audit every year. Ooh,
Yeah. I think it's a more difficult business like structure and maintenance than even like a LLC, single member
Yeah.
LLC.
yes. Because your revenue model is different. So like with a
Right.
business, like you have like a product or a service, but like with a nonprofit, it gets a little gray. So you can,
Hmm.
set it up where you are providing a service, but if you're serving frontline communities, if you're serving people in poverty, who's gonna pay for that? So you have to
Right.
be creative about how do you sustain this nonprofit, especially when you have staff, you have paid staff. I even think about the legalities, like of a nonprofit, the different types of insurance. Woo, my God, that you have to have. Like I think about, of course, you have to have liability insurance as you become a big nonprofit or growing. You have to have like professional liability insurance. So if somebody wants to sue you as an organization, you need to have insurance for that, so you don't have to come out of pocket. Um, you are using vehicles. So I think about like for us, we work with kids. So there's another layer of like coverage that you have to have. So I think a lot of times with people who start a nonprofit, they are moved by like the goodness and like the stewardship and the service, which is great. But you can't forget that it's still a business and it's subject to the same and even more requirements than would be with a traditional LLC. So that's, advice that I always lend is if you run a nonprofit, make friends with an attorney and make friends with an accountant and make friends with somebody that works in comms, um, meaning like folks that can help you with brand development. I think about with like our previous brand, like for Black Millennials for Flint. I mean, it's soared. Like we, were very blessed to have like Kenneth Worlds did both of our logos. Kenneth Worlds, phenomenal. Digital curator, works with campaigns, works on political campaigns. And so like having a diverse tribe is really important because you can't do all this stuff by yourself. And I don't ever want anybody to think that LaTricea just did all this stuff by herself. I had a whole group of people. The last thing I will say, and this is to touch on a point about like galvanizing people and getting people really engaged. I think what was helpful for us as an organization, we were very creative how we got people engaged. So, talking about like water quality might not be the most like sexiest topic, you know so we might do like especially back in the day, do a happy hour, do a brunch, connect with faith-based organizations. We did a lot of work collaborating with churches. We did work where we would go to PTO meetings, so we really diversify how who we're engaging with and how we're engaging with people, because like environmental issues are super technical, and again, like not as like we know with like criminal justice reform and police brutality, that's more in your face. We can understand like what is so flawed about that. But with environment, ooh, it gets a little tricky and complicated. So we try to make learning fun, for lack of a better phrase, and really trying to make this digestible for folks in a way that is easily to receive, right? So that's something else that I think we have done a really good job with, is the way that we present things to the general public and the ways in which we try to engage to reach people directly.
Yeah.
Mm,
You've always had like really great teams behind you, board of
mhm.
directors or your leadership. How did you pick and choose these people? How could somebody else that was like trying to replicate that? How what would
Mhm.
your recommendations be?
So thank you, first, but now when I said to pick your friends, it can't just be like your hey girl, hey boo, hey friends. It has to be somebody that's really qualified, like somebody that's really good in what they do. And so, one thing, I got a good spirit of discernment. I'm gonna sound like a old lady, but I do. Where I think it comes from me being a teacher. So when you're a
Hmm.
teacher and you study like your kids, you can pinpoint what they're good at. Like
Hmm.
immediately when I have a class of like 30 and you working with them, you're like, this baby is good at X, Y, and Z. You kind of do the same thing like when you're building a team. So like
Hmm.
pinpoint what you're good at. So
Mm,
like I think about, for example, with why I selected Karis, the former president of network. Um Karis was, first of all, Karis had a background in nonprofit leadership. I didn't. I was a teacher, but I have a background in nonprofit leadership. So she had worked for like big nonprofit organizations. She also, in addition to her, of course, like being president of Thursday Network, working with her with Thursday Network, I saw her thrive like in networking and starting programs. So
Mm-hmm.
under her leadership, she was very big on, if you want to get funding, you need to have signature programming. And that always
Mm.
resonated with me, because you see a lot of nonprofits where they do like one-off events. That's
Yeah.
not going to get funded. Like, no, and you're not really making a change, a big enough impact if you're doing like just one-off events. So
Yeah.
because I knew that about CARES, I was like, I need her because we need to build the infrastructure of the organization. I think about some of the other like founding board members. I immediately got an attorney. So I got an attorney that had a background.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
What?
no, sorry. I was thinking, I was like, was it Chanel? Is she an attorney?
So Chanel told me no. I was like, dang, friend, I immediately asked her.
But they have specialties. Was that wasn't her specialty?
That might not be a
No, now
specialty.
Yeah.
if she came on, so she's a civil rights attorney, but I needed her like from a legal perspective. Like, what do we need to get this thing up and going so that we don't get in trouble?
Mm.
So finding somebody like with that background. So pretty much like the approach that I took is, what all do I need? Who do I know that can do these things that I need? And understanding that that might not be in one person, it might be in a group of people. But then the other part that I think was really important with like building a team is also like, I mean, we've had some really good wins. I'm not gonna lie, we've had some good perks with accessibility to things over time. So I think about like now, like, because I have a White House appointment, like being able to be like, ooh, like I can add like my board to be like on this list to go to said event. Like, it's perks, it's still a business, right? So how you have to satisfy like your investors, if you will, you have to do the same thing like with your board, with whoever your sponsors are, whoever your funders are. But that team dynamic and having a working board is also really important. And then I think like beyond just like the leadership of a board, like also, and I don't really know like how I've been able to do that. I really can get people to like come out. So I think like in the beginning, I think that I do a good job like of storytelling to make you, to get you in your heart and your feelings, like you got to do this. Like really compelling points, like not trying to guilt shame people, but more so being like, this is so important and we really need you. I think has been helpful like over time. And then, I mean, it also is just like helpful, and not to keep bragging about the Urban League, but when you're in the Urban League, especially your Urban League president, you literally can connect to anybody in the United States of America that has a chapter. So if you need to quickly mobilize in Ohio, you can hit up a YP president in Ohio and be like, y'all got this lead issue. We need your help to mobilize. So I think that's also helpful, is having like both a local network and then a national network is also really helpful to help mobilize people.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you recommend someone that like wants to start a nonprofit and really wants to make a big impact, nationwide or worldwide impact? Would you recommend that they get involved in another nonprofit first and kind of get in a leadership position like you did?
I definitely would recommend that. I think like you really do need to have some sort of foundation. And I think that if you don't have enough experience, you'll burn out and you won't make it. Also, you can learn a lot just from serving on boards, like on nonprofit boards. Is really helpful to at least like understand like all of the intricacies that exist like with starting and running a nonprofit. So I definitely would recommend folks to at least like take a glimpse at what is happening like with existing nonprofits, so you can know what you want and also kind of learn what you don't want, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's really important. So I think that's
Yeah.
good advice.
You mentioned earlier that you guys started out with a fiscal sponsor. Can
Hmm.
you talk a little bit more about how you were able? Well, I know you were already in with the Urban Leagues. I believe that was the fiscal sponsor, but like, what are some of the formal things that you had to provide to them for them to say, okay, we will take you under our wing until you're able to get your designation?
First of all, Jesus and prayers. But you really, so being a fiscal agent, that's serious because essentially, like, they lend like their staff hours to you, like from a bookkeeping perspective, and then also like it's a risk. It's a risk. So when people are your fiscal agent, like they have to really trust you and care about the work that you do. So from a logistics perspective, woo, both for the fiscal agent and for the organization that is working with a fiscal agent, it is so much work. Oh my God. When you have a fiscal agent, that literally lights a fire under you to go ahead and get your own incorporation, go ahead and get your own 501c3. Because, like, one, when you have a fiscal agent, everything is on a reimbursement, like, procedure. It's a reimbursement procedure. So when you're just getting started, you don't have any money, right? Like we started at ground zero, so zero in the bank. So even though we know that we will get reimbursed, you're on their time, so you're at their mercy. So you end up having to front things. So I think about in 2018, no, in 2017 is when we did our first like big congressional black caucus event. And I remember we hosted it, I think, at the Thurgood Marshall Center. And so, ooh, I remember like I had to pay for like up front until I got reimbursed. I had to pay for people's flights that were coming in town, people's hotels.
Ooh, ooh,
I had to pay for the
Sheesh.
caterer. I had to pay for everything up front. And we talking about thousands of dollars. And I'm kind of young. I ain't got it like that. So
Right.
it's kind of difficult, when you do have a fiscal sponsor, because I mean, with an organization like an urban league, it's a very well established like organization. They can't just cash app you, your reimbursement. They can't send it to you. You have to go through these procedures like from
mhm.
just a bookkeeping perspective. So, we're extremely grateful, especially that they like took a chance, on this young organization, out the strength, like I didn't do anything crazy, like while I was a urban league president, but it's a lot to both serve as a fiscal agent, but then also to be the organization that has to work with the fiscal agent. After that experience, I was like, okay, yep, let's go ahead and get this incorporation. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot around, okay, so once we do become incorporated, it helped us to do really well. Like when we had to do our first audit, because we had to go through that reimbursement process with the fiscal agent, our books are always clean because we're still in that mindset of like documenting here, organizing your records. Shout out to Lauren, who's also being modest, that put us onto Wave apps. My God, I was doing things manually and wanted to cry. And so having like accounting software, is really important. Like when you start to have staff. So I learned a lot from the fiscal agent. But it definitely, you need to get your own stuff because it definitely, it creates another layer of work that you have to do. Right.
Hmm.
Ooh, it's a lot. It's a whole lot.
But it sounds like it created really good habits, financial habits, which of course I can appreciate. When you have your stuff in order and the auditor is coming in, you have your receipts, you have all your, stuff together. So I can
Yeah.
appreciate it. Something you said earlier was how, businesses sell products and services, and you guys have like this, you basically selling hope or selling whatever dream you have that you want to
Mhm.
get done. So I guess my question for you is, I know you had a marketing team, a comms person, but like, what was that flavor in your like written messaging that really was able to get people really excited about what you were doing, even though, you know, as you said, environmental justice isn't always the sexiest thing. Like, what's that spark or thing that people can, I don't know, so,
Galvanize.
yeah, like
Yeah.
from a communications perspective, you know, what did you guys really do to sell hope in the way you did to get the funding that you needed?
So social media is top tier. It's so top tier around like getting the word out, getting people engaged. Now, of course, social media looks a lot different than it did almost a decade ago, but still, like, it's so critical, like with messaging. So earlier on, I mean, we didn't have a choice but to use like social media. Also, we did a lot of curating stories around issues. Of course, in the beginning, there was a lot of issues around Flint, but we do a lot of work like trying to highlight like issues that'll like grab your attention. So not necessarily like super long articles and super technical stuff, baby. No one wants to read all of that. Tell me what's going on in a minute. So like Instagram Reels, other like TikTok now is really really helpful, like to not just to educate people, but to like get people like activated to do something. um, we also are very strategic in our target. So even though I'm like I'm still 25, but we still engage. We engage everybody, but we really focus on like people who are still under 40, because I mean, typically people who are under 40, especially people who are like under 35, they might not have like kids or like a partner yet where they have like extra time. Because I even think about myself, you know, like in my 20s, you know, in like my early 30s, I didn't have as many responsibilities. So I was literally looking for things to be involved in. So that's kind of like the sweet spot of who we engage. Now we got lucky because millennials and now Gen Z are very like socially conscious. So it wasn't like we had to like really pull teeth to get people to come out to stuff. We just had to, I think we were really successful for making it compelling because you have competition. Especially when we got started, you had like, I think what, in 2015, you had the riots in Baltimore where Freddie Gray was killed. Freddie Gray had childhood lead poisoning. So we literally took that narrative with what was going on with Freddie Gray and made the connection to environment. Of course, that spread like wildfire, pun intended, unfortunately, where folks were like, dang, really? Corinne Gaines, also killed by Baltimore police. She had lead poisoning as well. So we really tried to make the connections with things that already like got people like riled up and trying to like demonstrate like how all of this is interconnected, but then also explicitly telling people this is what you do. Because a lot of times folks would be like, get involved. How? Well, what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do to get involved? You're telling me to get involved, but what is it exactly that I should be doing? And we'll name it. We'll be like, sign this petition. Can you get off work and go make public comment like at this meeting? You can? Okay. Here's a script of things that you can say, you can change it up. So we do like a lot of scaffolding so that people feel like they can do something and not just leave it up to chance, that people automatically know what does it mean to activate and to get engaged. And that's that
Mhm.
teacher that's still in me where I'm like, say less. We'll give you some options. So that has been successful thus far.
Good.
I love it.
Awesome.
I know.
Well, LaTricea, unfortunately, we have to wrap up soon. It's been amazing
I know,
getting
so
all
many
your
gems.
good juju, good
I
gems.
know. And you have good energy. This is why the effervescence, like, Latricia just
LaTricea is awesome.
I
She's just
know.
Oh,
everything.
thanks, y'all. Y'all got me
You
blushing.
are.
Do you have any kind of like final words of advice for someone who would be interested in starting a nonprofit one day?
Including us.
Yeah. My last piece of advice is if you want to start a nonprofit, make sure that it is something that is not overly saturated. And if it is, what's going to be that thing that's super unique that's going to make you stand out? That's not to discourage like what your dreams are, but if you do want to start a nonprofit, like making sure that it is something that is so compelling where you can clearly articulate like what is the need that you are addressing that's not being adequately addressed. That would kind of be that would be my feedback. And then the other part is, baby, get some help from the beginning. Don't try to do this by yourself. If you do, have people with ministries and talents, lean into those folks so that you won't burn out before you can actually get started.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
Great advice.
I know. Oh, we didn't even get to the rebranding conversation, but maybe we'll
Yeah,
have to talk
part
about it another
two. Part two.
time.
Part two.
Come on back, girl.
Yeah. Also, we're kind of interested in like kind of having some more interviews with some of our people. So maybe we'll
Yeah,
go
so hopefully we
live
can
with
have
you or
you.
something. Yeah. On
Yeah,
social media.
if we can catch a child, because we gotta get on the calendar. So
And after November, I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna be better.
okay, I got you. So how can people get in contact with you? How can they volunteer and help with the causes of Young, Gifted, and Green?
So please follow us on social media. We have the same handle. It's at Young Gifted Green. And then you can visit us on our website, where you can sign up for our newsletter so you can stay up to date with like all of our like calls to action, any of our like programs and events, whether it be national or local. And then also feel free to reach out to us at info@younggiftedgreen.org if you have issues that are in your community. We not be able to 100% solve them, but we'll be able to make connections within our network to get you some support that you need. So
I love it.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. So, LaTricea, we always do a toast at the end, and usually it's in relation to what we're talking about. So, we're going to let you do the toast.
Yeah. What are we toasting to?
Yes.
Toasting to living and thriving in abundance. Come on, Kelly from Insecure.
Ooh.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I love that. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Amen.